No one else will tell you this, but I will. There is an economic storm brewing, and the Federal Reserve's decision around a rate cut today and tomorrow will not be able to stop it from coming. Across the United States, companies are cutting costs. Job creation has been completely fabricated.
The job growth has been far weaker in the U.S. than originally reported,
with the U.S. reporting over 800,000 jobs that never even existed. And the reality is that the average American is now working multiple jobs and still can't keep up with the basic cost of living. What is happening? And can lower rates or intervention by the Federal Reserve really solve these problems? For the last couple of decades, the Federal Reserve has basically kept a zero interest policy. They were able to do this because inflation wasn't rapidly rising in the mid-2000s. But companies got accustomed to these near zero interest rates, and even companies who weren't necessarily profitable experienced growth as the result of a free money era. But that window has closed. You talk to someone who bought a house 50 years ago in 1975, and rates were the same then as they are today. So why is it that people are unable to buy a house today when they were then? And no, I'm not talking about a housing inventory crisis. I'm talking about an affordability crisis. In the early 1970s, the US completely abandoned the gold standard, the Bretton Woods Agreement, officially delinking the dollar from gold. While the Federal Reserve up until this point had been getting away with overprinting thanks to the exportation of US dollars, it was at this moment when the handcuffs were completely shattered and the printing press began working overtime. Two things happened as a result. The first being the loss of your purchasing power. It's common sense. You cannot create more units of a currency and expect that currency to maintain its current value. Since the Federal Reserve was created in 1913, the dollar has lost about 97% of its purchasing power. Since 2020, the dollar has lost 25% of its purchasing power, leaving us with nothing. And I'll prove it. The median household income in 1970 in the US was just under $9,000. The median sale price of a house the same year was $23,000. So the cost of a single-family household was just over 2 times the median annual income. Today, the median household income in the US is $80,000, and the median sale price of a home is $428,000. So that is over 5 times. It costs 5 times the amount of the annual income in order to buy a single family home. And that's not all. We're not even close to being done. Guess what else has changed since 1970? When we talk about the median household annual income, keyword being household, it's not per person, it's per house. In 1970, only 40% of women were in the workforce. Today, that number has close to doubled, which is great. I love to work. But what's not great is the tragedy that when we look at these numbers, you have way more people working for way less. And one more thing, as if all of that is not already enough, the cost of daycare on a family in 1970 was on average about 2% of their annual earnings. Today, it's about 18%. The cost of daycare has gone up that much that it's about 18% of an average family's annual earnings.
A recent analysis finds the annual cost of childcare now rivals the cost of a college education in many states.
When they tell you that income has kept up with the cost of inflation, it is a lie. The reason that people could afford to buy a house when rates were the same back in the 70s versus today is because their dollar had more purchasing power. Rates are not the problem here. It is a broken system. Today, we have credit card debt topping out at over $1 trillion despite insanely high APRs. The average American is completely over-leveraged, as is evident by record 401k hardship withdrawals and savings accounts that are practically non-existent. I'm sorry, but it does not take a rocket scientist to figure out why this is happening. $35 trillion of national debt and counting, with $1 trillion being added on every 100 days. The answer on how to help the American people does not start and stop with rate cuts. It's government spending. and stealing the value of our dollar. Yes, sure, rate cuts could help in the short term. Let's get some funds moving. But the hemming and the hawing in the news and the media and from economists and investors about rate cuts being the biggest deal out there is simply a charade. It's a farce. It's an act so that we all think that the Federal Reserve and the government know what they're doing. They're making it up as they go because they know the truth, that the system is already broken. Sure, they're creating new ways to keep the machine running, but the harsh reality is that inflation is not going away. Okay, let me ask you something I asked a friend the other day. Do you think that the government is going to stop spending? Yes or no? Do you think that they are going to make progress on our national debt and deficit? Yes or no? I am going to guess that you answered no, especially given all of the spending that they're going to have to do when this recession that they created is undoubtedly going to hit and get a whole lot worse. This brings us to the second thing that is happening as a result of the overspending, which is a greater division in the wealth distribution, the haves and the have-nots. They say that wealth doesn't disappear, it merely changes hands, which means that the confiscation of the value of your dollar, of your purchasing power through inflation, is essentially theft. And the value that is being taken from you is being redistributed elsewhere, most likely to the already super wealthy, the elite, the people in power. That's why everything we hear is all smoke and mirrors. It's all a way to keep us distracted. Look over here, look over there. What is the Federal Reserve going to do next? As if the Fed hasn't already decided what they're going to do, as if they don't already understand how much bigger the problem is. But by keeping this focus on rate cuts and keeping us involved in the discussion, well, it gives us, the American people, a sense of control, a sense of understanding. We now know what's going to happen, and we can rightfully be upset or happy with the decisions that are being made. But in reality, it's all just a part of their game. Let me fill you in on just one more secret. The Federal Reserve, the protectors against inflation, guess what they've been up to? They have been spending. It is so contradictory that it will blow your mind. It's one big circle. They want you to look over here, look at what we're doing with rates, but definitely don't look at our spending because it's contradictory. The actions and what they're saying, they don't align. Whatever happens with rate cuts, yes, of course it's important. It will impact the stock market. I want a family to be able to go buy a home, or a small business to get a loan, or more jobs to be created. But the reality is the economic storm that has been created, that is barreling our way, is so much bigger than a 25 or 50 basis point rate cut. If you are also a truth seeker and you have been looking beyond what they want you to see and you're concerned about any of this, all I can say is that it is time to stop playing their game, to stop playing by their rules, and take control back. And if you ask me how, I will tell you. Physical gold and silver. I know I've said it before, but I'll explain it again. Think about the dollar. Think about everything we just talked about. They can always create more, and they will create more. They will continue to devalue the dollars in your wallet, in your savings, in every single asset that you think you own, but you really don't. Because if it's dollar denominated, you are always going to be at the will of those in power. But gold, you hold it, you own it. It is a safe store of value since the beginning of time. It is the reason that central banks across the world are moving away from the dollar as quickly as they can and making sure that they have their gold reserves protected, because that is going to be the true wealth. That is going to be what not only protects wealth, but sets everyone up on the other side so that you are in a position of power, you are in a position of opportunity. And that is what I want for everyone who is watching. I know not everyone will take action, but if you are sitting out there and you are concerned, I urge you, take action now. Knowledge and education is fundamental to what we believe, but it will only take you so far. It is action that will truly make sure that you safeguard your wealth for what's coming next. The reality is there are too many people who are waiting to see what will happen next. But you and I already understand something that they don't, that the system itself is broken. So it doesn't matter what small tweaks are made, what levers are pulled, ultimately, if you store your wealth in a system that is broken, you will lose every time. That's what history has told us. So if you haven't already, click the link below, talk to one of our expert analysts who understand all of these concepts, and make sure that you are protected today, that you have a strategy in place for what's coming next before it happens. That's my wish for you and for everyone out there who's watching. And as always, I thank you for being here. It means so much. I'm Taylor Kenny with ITM Trading, your trusted source for all things gold, silver, and lifelong wealth protection. Until next time.